Hello and welcome to this CRE seminar on retirement and the church. For the next few minutes I'm going to look at some of the issues around churches and retired people. I'll be approaching this from a very personal perspective, having recently given up paid work completely after 39 years of employment and after a 5-year period of being semi-retired. I've been asked to look at this area from the perspective of both the retiree and the church. And that's interesting because since I've been in retirement, I've actually become a church leader. So I may transition during this seminar from one perspective to the other without much warning. Come along for the ride. I said this would be personal, and so I'm beginning with my journey, which began in 2009 with a prayer request to our church's ministry team. And this is what I wanted to pray about. I'm convinced that for both the church and the retiree, prayer should be involved at all stages of the journey. We'll return to that later in the seminar. We didn't actually answer most of the questions on this slide during our prayer session, but God did lead us forward from there. And I started semi-retirement as I desired in May 2012, and to be frank, I'm not sure whether either my wife or I knew what that meant, but we felt that prayer was a great place to begin. When I'm trying to get a perspective on any subject, I usually start with a formal definition of the words. It's just the scientific training I had. The dictionary definition which Google provides is almost laughable. I'm not sure that I know any retired colleagues who have ceased to work. Do you? This illustrates an issue that we have with retirement today. It's not what it used to be. A new initiative from CARE, After WorkNet, puts it like this. Would your mum have shopped for the latest fashion, joined an aerobics class or had a night out with the girls? Would your dad in his 60s have jogged, gone to a music festival or made plans for international travel? Come retirement, would either of them have been anticipating fresh discoveries, challenges and experiences? A wider world beyond work and family? The answer to all these questions is almost certainly no, because in just one generation, incredible changes have taken place regarding how we live and how we approach things when paid work comes to an end. I want you to note particularly that final phrase, when paid work comes to an end. That's one of the major changes. Most retirees today finish paid work but move into unpaid work, often known as volunteering. But more about that later too. We have another word to look at. If the last definition was laughable, this one is sad. Superfluous has such finality and seems so very critical. The reality, I believe, is far from this situation, although it's not always plain sailing, finding your place in society or church as a retired person. Royal Voluntary Service research found that men were the worst affected by the change into retirement, with nearly a third saying they rarely or never get to use their talent or skills, compared to 14% of women. They also discovered that nearly 1 in 10 older people don't get the chance to use their skills to benefit the community, even though they would like to. It looks like there is a large number of people out there looking for opportunities to use their time, their talents and their energies, and that must include a lot of the older folk in our churches. One of the questions we need to consider is the value of volunteered service to both the retiree and to the community. It appears from this research that not volunteering has negative effects on the non-volunteer, and that volunteering has positive effects if, and only if, they get some benefit from their volunteering. That might be an encouragement, seeing the value of their contribution, or an increase in the number of relationships they can maintain. If we are to encourage more retirees into service, it's important to know that this activity will benefit them as well as the church and community. The good news is that the benefits are clearly proven and well demonstrated. So we can recruit positively and actively, knowing that there is a win-win result of all this activity. As an aside, did you actually know that there is a gender difference in what activities appeal to men and women? Recent research shows that men are attracted to health charities and football, and women to children's charities and lunch clubs. It's also very easy to demonstrate the benefits to the community of the church and its volunteers. Surveys like this cinnamon one can be used to demonstrate the value of church social action to government, national and local, but it can also be used directly with retirees to motivate them to see that, even if they can only give a little time, it contributes to a much greater whole and has a nationwide effect and implications. As one volunteer said, "Dreams and aspirations are what move things on. We aim to put smiles on little faces." And what does he do? He mends kids' bikes. But is the church able to take advantage of this vast pool of talent? If one can ignore the Daily Mail's outrage, it looks like there may be a problem. They go on to say that Generation A, the parents of the 1960s baby boomers, were the last generation whose values are centred on family, nation and God. Interestingly, this same research may also provide part of the answer as to why this is the case. Elderly people have never been given a formal voice or fully acknowledged by the church. That was then, this is now, and the church needs to change. What seems to happen in church circumstances is that we fail to appreciate the distinction. We simply think that offering an opportunity for service is all that's required. It clearly isn't the case, and this is another way that things have changed in this generation. As I said earlier, incredible changes have taken place. The old order and the old methods don't work anymore. But saying it's your Christian duty is not going to motivate many of today's Christian retirees. It might cause them to think about it, but it's simply not enough to persuade them to do the job. Since I retired, I've found a number of outlets for my energies and talents as I've joined groups of volunteers, both church and secular. I've become very aware of the power of motivation. Why is it that we do what we do? To answer that question, we have to look at motivation and the differing motivation between retirees and employees. If we take vocation out of the picture, we can assume that most employees have a financial interest in their employment, and that this is at least one of the key motivations for their employment. You can't make this assumption with retirees. Their motivation is different and may differ greatly between individuals too. This leads to a very different relationship, and for the groups to be treated differently. Obviously, in a church context, we can include other important motivations, including evangelism and Christian service. But by understanding why people do what they do, church leaders can better match the retired people in their congregations to the roles which they are keen to see filled. This research noted that 23% of over 55s who currently or plan to volunteer said that retirement was the catalyst for this, and that was certainly true for me. But simply knowing that isn't helpful. We need to know what the aims and objectives of the volunteers are if we're to helpfully match them to the tasks we're keen to see filled. One of the voluntary groups I'm involved in, outside the church, has a number of folk with very different motivations for being part of the team. Several have motivations shown on this slide, but not all. Angela was a road safety officer in her professional life, and she wants to use that skill and knowledge to encourage more people to cycle, and thus make the world more ecologically sustainable. Derek, on the other hand, is motivated by meeting people, but he wants, actually needs, to influence them, not just to get to know them. How do you reconcile these different needs and motivations? The research seems to suggest that before we appoint people to volunteer roles or accept them ourselves, we need to have a full understanding of both the role and the potential volunteers' motivations. This is typically what is happening during any professional recruitment process. Job descriptions are created, adverts published, application forms received, and interviews held before any appointment is made. What would be so bad about following a similar, if slimmed down, process in church volunteer recruitment? I suggest that the minimum is creating job descriptions for volunteer roles and interviewing, however formally or informally, any potential candidates. In this way, both parties can be assured that there is a high degree of fit between the role and the person. This increases volunteer satisfaction, productivity, and longevity in the role. But do you know what one change research shows makes a real difference in the regularity of volunteering and time given? Paying a retiree's out-of-pocket expenses. Interesting, but true. Having said that, we all need to keep an eye out for the issue of balance. We often hear the comment, "Since I retired, I've never been busier." To be frank, I think that's not true, for me at least. But I am busy with things I've chosen to do rather than things that I had to do. That's a huge difference for me and has led to much less stress. Having said that, there is an issue with volunteering and maintaining a family balance. With the question often asked, how do you manage this? I think that you have to prioritise. Make a list, perhaps even rate and scale, think sustainably. The question is, will I still want to do this in 2 years? Build in time and flexibility for emergencies, health issues, both yours and your family's. Don't fall into the trap of saying yes to everything. Always take time for considered reflection and prayer. It's really important to remember that you are affecting people's lives, other people as well as your own, by the decisions that you make. It's not just flower arranging, football coaching and toddler groups, you know. It's possible to solve problems that your church may have by creative volunteering. Our church plant is on an estate where insularity is rife. We can't get people to even open their doors. We decided that if we couldn't get into their homes, we'd get them to come to us. We started a free computer clinic every 2 weeks in the local pub. Not obvious, is it? Based around my skills with computers and technology, we offer free repairs, advice and training to anyone in our community and they flock in. We have a prayer team, a group of befrienders, and an increasing number of geeks. Every client leaves with a low-key gospel message and with happy technology. Interestingly, the most fruitful relationships have been with the geeks themselves, those who've come alongside to help and assist me. I see a great deal of these guys, and they've become close friends, and some even take part in church activities now. But as a wider church, we need to be aware that there is more than one type of volunteer. I've categorised them into 3 groups: leadership volunteers, structural volunteers, and casual volunteers. Leadership volunteers are those who are happy to take a brief, perhaps a project, a plan, or a proposal, and make it their own. They find a team, set up an infrastructure, and sustain the whole work long term. Basically, they are take the ball and run with it kind of people, as far as the church is concerned. These folks are the gold standard of volunteering, but not every retired volunteer is able or willing to act in this way. Structural volunteers are those who will faithfully turn up each time they're on the rota and do what's been asked of them every session. You can base work on them as you know that they are reliable, but they need leadership to be part and made part of the structure of your project. Most churches are likely to have a number of these folk, many of whom will already be fully engaged in church activities. But given the right encouragement and recruitment methods, you can probably find more when needed. Casual volunteers are very different. They help when needed and when called upon, but they don't or won't accept any leadership or rota roles. They just want to help when and where they can. It's not possible to create or maintain work on that kind of volunteer, but that doesn't mean they're not useful. Church leadership needs to be more creative in how they use such folk. But we need to go back to the centrality of prayer for both the retiree and the church leadership who may be hoping to use their skills, abilities and time. I'm convinced that individuals need to be actively and prayerfully analysing the opportunities which exist for them in retirement, and even consider creating their own opportunities based on God's call on their life. That doesn't go away, or even have to change, because of the transition into retirement. For church leadership hoping to capitalise on retirees and increase their ministry through retiree time and effort, it's essential that they interview those offering to help, and then prayerfully determine whether they have the right person or persons for the task, and or whether they have correctly discerned God's leading them into their current specification of the task itself. Brian Blessed OBE said, "Life is an adventure and we need to squeeze every last drop out of it." He probably said it much more forcefully and with a much deeper voice. I actually doubt that he's aware that Jesus said, "I have come that you might have life and life abundant." Let's ensure that as retired folk or those in church leadership, we're facilitating abundant life for both ourselves and the others in our community who need us to be actively contributing all that we are able. We may be retired, but we certainly aren't redundant. Before I finish, I want to tell you about a couple of resources that might prove useful to both your church and to you as a potential retiree. Christian Vocations is a ministry I have come across several times during my working life, and I'm impressed with them. They have all kinds of opportunities, and it's well worth going to have a look at them. They're part of Global Connections now, and you can easily get onto their website, just Google Global Connections or Christian Vocations and you'll find more of what they have to offer. The other initiative that I should mention is After WorkNet, and I'm going to start with their video. Here we go.
Retirement. It's like taking a leap from safety and security into the vast unknown. Rushing towards you is an after-work world of huge challenge, but also amazing opportunity. A world where you'll want to make your Christian faith count, but need much more than a wing and a prayer to do so. But help is at hand. Life doesn't have to be in freefall. Now there's an online community of people just like you, retired and active, helping each other come to terms with change, seizing ways to live life to the full at home, at church, in their community. Retired or about to be? Looking forward to doing more than pruning the roses?
After WorkNet, check it out, join the conversation, share the news. Hey, that was work, this is now. Hey guys, good job everybody, amazing, good job, well done. High fives all round, nice work.
Thank you. Totally amazing.
After WorkNet is a great resource. It's a developing resource. They're still adding material day by day. It's worth signing up to their mailing list and getting their emails as they add material. I want to recommend it highly. It's a great resource and you can take part. You can contribute, comment, even write your own articles. So do consider them. Here's what one of their web pages looks like, but there's plenty to do. It's been a real privilege to talk to you today. I hope that you found it interesting, and if you've got any comments, please do leave them on the CRE website, creonline.co.uk. Thank you very much. Bye bye.